he's asking the question, is Kyle Shanahan a good leader? Has he thrown that question to you? If not, I'm throwing it to you. What do you think?
Well, he's touched on it with me. Yeah, we've talked about it. I think, like everybody, he has strengths and weaknesses as a leader. So I think there's things that Kyle Shanahan does really well as a leader, and I think there's probably things he can improve on. And I think that's probably could be said for almost anybody out there, aside from a few just generational talented type of leaders. I think there's things that Kyle Shanahan does that is fantastic. And then there's things I think he can improve on. One of those things, Larry, I will say is, I've been in management. I've never been at the level Kyle Shanahan is running, head of $1 billion organization, but I have been in management. And one of the things I've studied about, learned about as a leader is hiring the right people and giving them the freedom to do their thing. Whereas with Kyle, I feel like sometimes he is micromanaging a little bit too much. He takes on too much control where he could maybe just trust his instincts, trust his hires, and let them kind of run with things. And I think that would free up Kyle Shanahan to focus more on what he needs to focus on. Overall, I haven't seen things that, tell me he's an awful leader. There are some things communication-wise I would like to see him improve on. I think sometimes he's with the media and with the public, he needs to understand that he is the face of this franchise and that you don't have to be, he comes off a little arrogant sometimes in his answers with the media and with the press. He doesn't have to be that way necessarily. And I think that could help him a little bit. But as far as his teams goes, he's built very solid teams. His players seem to respect him and like him a lot. So as far as that's concerned, he seems to be a good leader. But there's some other things, like face of the franchise type things, management, hiring people and letting them, trusting them to make the right decisions. Those types of things I think he can improve on. And I think we all have areas where we can improve in all factors of life.
It's funny. It's like it's easy for us to kind of shoot holes in a guy who's on the podium. Mm-hmm. But what it must feel like to be there, whether you're Kyle Shanahan talking to the Niners, whether you're the White House spokesperson who's you've got a room full of people that aren't your friends. Mm-hmm. That aren't necessarily wishing the best for you. You know what I mean? That aren't necessarily on your team. And yet they're asking you questions, and they may have motivations behind their questions to make you look bad or make you look, inconsistent in your philosophy or your approach to the game. And so you don't want to be this paranoid jerk, but at the same time, you can't sit there and be like, hey, these are my buddies. They're not. I look at the leadership thing from two things. From the strict, do you feel like the 49ers ball out and play hard every week compared to what you see from other teams around the league?
Yeah.
And I would say, I don't know if it's the players they get, the culture they establish, or if it's from Kyle. So I don't know if I should credit him with this, but I see a team that goes at it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that brings it emotionally, physically, mentally every week. I don't see too many games where I'm like, yeah, they don't seem that into it. They seem like they're dialed down. They weren't ready to play. So that's one for me. I don't see the lack of like energy and drive and intensity. So in that standpoint, I think he gets them ready to play. But is that him getting them ready to play, or is it John Lynch picking a room full of guys that are ready to play or that love to play? I think it all is kind of tied together. Yeah. Then I also have done interviews with the players, and, players they won't come on the record with, I don't like Shanahan. They're not idiots. He's controlling their playing time, which is essentially controlling their money.
Right.
But the way it goes. It's like they'll whisper in the corner of the room. They'll tell you one thing with the camera rolling, and when the cameras stop rolling and the microphones are turned off, it's like, yeah, I'll tell you this, you do get a little bit of that, but I've never had a player ever turn on Shanahan in any way, shape, or form, like saying, yeah, he's about himself. But I do think he holds the quarterbacks to a really high standard. And if they fail, he doesn't cover them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's I bet you, like, if we asked Jimmy, if it was me, you, and Garoppolo in this live stream, I
Yeah.
think Garoppolo's, unfiltered view of Shanahan might be different,
Yeah.
because I think Shanahan's really tough on his quarterbacks. And
Hmm.
I think you need to really be tough mentally to deal with Kyle Shanahan as the coach, because he's going to get, when it goes well, it's like, hey, Kyle's a star. But when it doesn't go well, it's like, hey, the quarterback really effed up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So sometimes there's that lack of accountability from Kyle. And there's sometimes I wish he would just more. I know he's hesitant to say, hey, man, it's on me. Because if you say that enough, then it's like people are going to start blaming you. You know, you
Yeah.
say it's on me enough, then eventually go, yeah, it is on you, and you should be
Mm.
out.
Yeah.
Um, he, in my opinion, he could take 25% more accountability and say, you
Yes.
know what? It didn't work out. Quarterback X didn't get it done. But you know what? We share in responsibility for that because of this, this, and this. And I'll, at the end of the day, the buck stops with me, and I'll take the blame. I'm the big dog here. You know, whatever you got to say to take
Hmm.
true ownership. I'd like to hear a little bit more of that. But overall, I think his team plays hard. And I've never heard a player basically say, you know, to me, it's like the players like who they play hard for coach. It's like sales. You sell based on like and trust. And
Hmm.
like what you know establishes the trust, but who you are establishes the like. And I
Yeah.
just get the vibe that the players like Shanahan as a person. They
Hmm.
trust that his schemes work, and that they're playing really hard for him consistently. So that's kind of as far as I take the leadership thing. But if people want to say, hey, he's not as accountable as he needs to be,
Yeah.
I can see that too.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And there's that old expression: "It's not what you say; it's how you say it."
Yeah.
And I understand the media is not necessarily on his side, but let's be honest, you're there, and you're smart enough to see how the media works throughout this country. Bay Area media is not too tough out on Kyle Shannon. There's a couple guys that'll throw in questions, Grant being one of them, that are pretty tough. But in general, you know, 49ers media is not too tough on Kyle Shannon. They don't ask him the hardest questions. I just think he can learn how to deliver the same answers that he's giving in a way that comes off less abrasive. Now, as far as the guys playing hard, I think the players like Kyle Shanahan. There's no doubt in my mind that they do. But I also think you touched on it. It's the players in the building. They do a really good job of bringing those type of players in. Kyle Shanahan is not really the emotional leader, right? He's not firing anybody up. It doesn't seem like to me. I think a lot of that comes from within, but of course they do like Kyle Shanahan. I have no reason to think they don't. Like I said, I think we can all improve in areas. None of us are really perfect. I think there's things Kyle Shanahan can do better as a leader of the organization, and there's things that he does really well already.
Um, I think the Krug show's perfect. I don't need to improve. No, no. No, but I think
Yeah.
you're totally right. You're totally right.